Welcome to the Rise Up Network. I'm your host, James Carmody. Rise Up Network is committed to sharing those stories of America's servant leaders. Those men and women that are out there in the marketplace, in the community, making a difference. I have a great leader in studio with me today, in studio on Zoom. As you know, we're still doing that to some degree. I have someone who is in the real estate space, like I am professionally, but also is a family man, a mentor, very successful at what they do, takes a unique approach to their business, really putting others first, and fits the Rise Up mold and some of the ethos and characteristics that we embody in this network. I have Richard Gonor, who's the Executive Vice President of JLL with me. Richard, welcome to the show.
James, thank you so much for having me. As you know, I'm a fan of the show, and I've been following you on social media for a while, so it's awesome to be here and love what you're doing. Thanks a lot, brother.
Yeah, you got it. Thanks for making some time for us. I know you're a busy guy. So yeah, we both have real estate backgrounds. We can talk real estate, and I think we'll touch on that a little bit, maybe give people a little bit of our professional perspective on what's been going on, since COVID. But before we even dive into that, where you're from and, what was your upbringing like?
Awesome. Well, thanks. I appreciate that. Oftentimes I get on these podcasts or interviews and it goes straight into real estate. So love the opportunity to be with you here today.
Yeah.
So my background, I grew up in Texas, and I grew up in the suburbs of Houston. And I guess at the time, I would think we were middle class family, and I was an only child. And my parents owned their own business. They were in the seafood industry. If I recall, your parents were also in that industry, were they not, James?
My dad was a ship pilot, and I actually grew up commercial fishing in Massachusetts as a kid.
Yeah, exactly. So my parents owned a wholesale company in Houston. They owned a distribution company. What I remember the most about my childhood and my parents was, I remember them working really, really hard. Being an only child, they both worked. And what that meant for me was they would leave before I was awake, before it was even daylight. And they would leave and come home. They would try and get home for dinner, but usually it was every Friday night for sure. We would have dinner together, and weekends were sacred, and usually working late, 6, sometimes 7 days a week, and putting a lot of hours into that, and really trying to provide a life, a future for me and our family. And that was most important to them. And I remember them working hard. And so from that, I think going forward, as I got into college, of course, I was more on the social side of college at Texas State, but I learned probably my last semester that I had an interest in real estate and got introduced into commercial real estate and got my job in the early 90s when the market was in a really, really tough spot. Having that background with my parents, I just had a grit that I felt like, hey, I can figure this out. I don't care what people are telling me. And jumped right into commercial estate in 1992. And that's what brought me into San Diego.
Right there, just to interrupt for a second, and highlight for you guys that are listening and watching this. I mean, it's those role models in our lives. God willing, you're lucky enough that it's your parents or one of two parents, right? Or maybe it's a family member, neighbor, or pastor like that. But to say, hey, I'm going to get up early, I'm going to work late, I'm going to do whatever it takes to provide for my family, and it rubs off on people, whether you know it or not, your kids are watching, like people are picking this stuff up, so it's not like your parents necessarily taught you this. You just noticed it, you lived it, and you saw it. And then you inherently appreciate and develop that grit and that characteristic in yourself. Love that.
Well, I didn't really notice it or appreciate it until much
just how
later
it was. It's just what you did.
It's just what I did. It's like what mom and dad did. And it's interesting how we, like you said, mentors that you have in your life, whether it's your parents or your siblings or what have you, it's at that early age where habits are being formed and people are watching and learning. And it wasn't really until much, much later in my life, being an only child, I didn't know any better. And my parents were gone all the time, of course, and I thought that was normal. But I felt like I had a very, very close relationship with my parents. My mother was somebody that I could go to no matter what. My father was more of a disciplinary, but
I think we had
ingrained
similar
something.
parent relationships.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
dad, big, strong, quiet guy, and he's who you saw when you stepped out of line. Whereas mom was more
Exactly.
like I don't want to say a pal, but like I could tell mom anything.
Exactly. And so that's that's what got ingrained in me to kind of, get me into commercial real estate. And despite a horrible time during the S&L period and the bank failures and the RTC and everything that was going on, and just kind of jump into it and kick my way. I feel like I'm at the top of my career, but I feel like I've got a lot further to go. I've worked on some exciting projects, but more importantly, during that time period, graduating from college, I got married when I was I was 34. My wife was 35. We're about 6 months different. So we took our time, finding the right partners, which was great. And when I met her, it was one of these things that I knew there was something absolutely different about her. And we've been married 15 years. We dated for about a year, and we've got 2 beautiful daughters that are 12 and 15 years old now.
Let me ask you about that for a sec, because there's a lot of folks that listen to this and watch this, that are married, have a family or are heading down that path. I like you, chose to wait a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
What did you discover about yourself, and what do you think some of the benefits are, for that kind of timing?
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because we tell our daughters, you better have a 3 in front of your age by the time you get married.
I might steal that from my kids.
Yeah, and the big thing is, as you know, when you're a 20-year-old becoming a 30-year-old, there is so much change and growth that happens. And not everybody is the same. And I don't want to say every person out there has to absolutely wait till they're 30, because there's a lot of great couples that get married earlier than that. But for myself, where I was at, I saw a tremendous change happening. And I think each decade you can look back and see these changes occurring, but it's really being able to know who you are as a person inside and understand what the right partner for you is, because your tastes change, your priorities change. And if you're not aligned in certain goals and certain aspirations in life, I guess, then you're going to grow apart. But if you know where you're grounded, and you find a partner that you can grow together and follow each other's interests, that's, to me, what makes for a great relationship and why it's worth waiting.
Yeah, I love that. And I really like that you used the word grounded. I think being grounded and comfortable in your own skin, but also in the relationship. You can weather any storm if you're grounded with yourself and with your partner or spouse. Love that.
Absolutely. So getting back to my kids, now they're 12 and 15, and as a father, I was an only child, as I mentioned before, and getting married was a big step. Coming from, it's about me, and it you don't know that when you're an only child, but for me, it was a little bit of an eye-opener, not a huge eye-opener, but, it's now about 2 people. And then when you have a family, it's about 3 or 4, or however many kids you have. And those become the most important things in your life. Being a parent, being a coach, having coached both of my kids' softball teams, you go through an awakening, if you will. And I realized that somebody else out there that's more important than me, that I want to put them first, and I'm serving them. I think that's really what started to open my eyes professionally as well, was once I got married and once I started having kids, you start taking the eye off of it's about me and I'm here to serve others. And now that my kids are getting older, when I say older, starting to enter into high school, I can take that appreciation for family and for kids and bring it into my professional life. You know, last year especially was a great time in my industry to take a step back and think about how we're approaching things, how I was approaching my clients, but really bringing that servant attitude towards my clients and not being transactional, and more realizing that everybody's got dreams and goals. Every one of my clients, their jobs or the properties that they invest in, you know, that's tied to somebody's vacation, that's tied to somebody's college fund or what have you. And I look at the course of my career, and as I mentioned, I've had some successes. But what resonates the most with me isn't the fact that I had these successes and I was able to put some money away at the end of the day. It was the fact that I had this journey. I created an awesome relationship with somebody and I helped them to achieve their goals. And what made me feel the best about that was seeing them be happy with the job that I did. And I think that ties into, you know, what I learned being a parent, a husband, and just kind of opening up my mind to serving others. And that's really what it's about for me, serving others.
Yeah. You know, there is, I want to say, I mean, I think one of the keys to being happy, you know, being a joyful person is to have some level of service to others. And I think the sooner that we can discover that for ourselves and what that looks like, and it can take all different forms, you know, and expressions. But life's just so much more fulfilling and gratifying when it's about others and not just about you, you know. I want to back up a second, you know, because we're recording this, you know, as we're coming out of a global pandemic that, you know, basically the human race got stopped and told to stay at home for a year. And
right.
being two guys in real estate, and you particularly being in commercial real estate, and you know, for the most part, commercial buildings were empty, you know, as people were working from home just to be safe and survive. You know, what was that like in the beginning, and what were some of the things that you kind of had to discover and learn and go through, you know, being in the commercial real estate space?
Sure, absolutely. So being in the office building space or office leasing specialist and selling office buildings, 2020 hit, and obviously the music stopped and there was no more going into the office. I do a lot of transactions. I do over 100 plus transactions a year, which in my space is a lot of volume. Significant volume. And when March hit and the stay-at-home mandate hit, the music stopped. There were other sectors that kept going, like science and industrial, but in the office world, people were at home. They were told to stay at home. They didn't know when they were going to be back in the office. And it was literally like a blizzard, right? One day to the next, people didn't know what they were going to do. Maybe a week, but like next month, forget about it. And there were a lot of deals that we were working on that just, you know, got put on ice.
Yeah.
And so that was a big wake-up call for me, a huge wake-up call. A, what are we going to do? And B, when are things going to, how am I going to provide?
Right.
The unknown. And there's still, for some people, a little bit of unknown. But, you know, as life pressed on and the days went by and the weeks started to happen, I think like most America, people felt like this is a special time that we're able to hit this pause button for those of us that could, and to really take time with our families and not worry about what's going to happen today or tomorrow, where is it going to come from, because life provides. And it was more about a time of reflection for myself and with my family about my job and my clients and how I'm approaching my business, how I'm approaching my clients, how am I showing up every day as a father, as a husband, as a coworker. And those were great months that we were able to take and spend time together as a family and just kind of take that time. But things started to open back up. We were actually only closed for a few months before we started to reopen. But I've obviously changed the way that I've approached my clients, as I explained a little bit earlier, and even more so now. And things have started to open up. We've seen a lot more activity, especially with the vaccines. My work day is almost back to normal. Like I approach it like it was in 2019. There's still tenants out there that are companies that have got uncertain futures and they want to play it safely. But for all intents and purposes, things are on the right track to recover. And I think this is, something that we'll look back on, and it'll be temporary. There's different phases that we've gone through, from work from home to the hub and spoke model and to flex space. But eventually we're all going to be back in the office.
Yeah. Yeah. And something I've been dying to ask you, as an office expert, how do you think this is going to play out? One, for like flex time, my company, that's what we're going to with, over 600 employees. But what do you think the impact will be like on the commercial space? I mean, do you think that companies will say, hey, I don't need this large a footprint anymore? And will there be a permanent shift or a rezoning? What do you think the changes will be?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I kind of gave you a little bit of a high level, but I think that we are in a phase right now, just like work from home was a phase, and just like the flex. You need to be in the office 2 days a week. You can work home 3 days a week. Don't get me wrong. There's certain jobs that can be done from home where you've got, you're just doing head down work, and you've got to meet a quota. And if you meet that quota, your job is done. But you're not able to build company culture over a Zoom call. You're not able to mentor new hires. Nobody wants to graduate from school and go to work at home, to be at home at their first, virtual first company. So I strongly believe that all companies are headed back into the direction of eventually being in the office. And it may take a few quarters to where when they see that the production is down because the employees from home aren't able to be as productive for a number of reasons, those requirements are going to get tighter and tighter to get back into the office. And we're seeing a lot of the major tech companies, making announcements and making pushes in that direction. But obviously there's legal ramifications around some of that. So it's going to take some time, but I do think that we'll continue going back into the direction of being in the office. Yeah.
That's interesting. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Right. I think it's a little early to tell, I know,
it's
like
a little early to tell.
Just my crew, like I have, a team of 6 that support me day in, day out. I remember when I told them about 2 months ago, mid-July, we're going back, and we're going to go back 2-3 days a week. Like their heads fell off. They're like, wait a minute, I can't sit on my couch forever. I'm like, no, you can't.
Okay.
And I like to think as a leader, I've done a good job with increasing the amount of meeting frequency, so not once a week, to every morning and midday huddles, and, bringing and trying to during the pandemic that, a couple of people that I never even met when I hired them, and a couple new hires that I just met, and they had been on board for 3 months, so it'll be interesting, and we're going to go back to 2, maybe 3 days a week and see how it goes. But, as a capitalist, if I feel like, productivity is not there, it'll be full-time pretty quick. But I don't know. I think as a country, we've kind of gotten a taste for this work from home balance, but if it's not as profitable, then sure, I think it'll go back.
Well, technology is there, obviously, and this kind of catapulted us into, the next level And I do agree that there's flexibility in our future, and work was already changing as we know it. It just happened at light speed, right? And so I think we're going to see this progression back to where we were at. I think there will still be flexible work models, and you're right. We're used to that now, but there is that balance, like you said, productivity. Are they being productive? Are they sitting on the couch? And a lot of other employers, business owners, supervisors have those same concerns, and where those concerns get alleviated is when those employees are back in the office. And so that, for just that reason alone, I think that we'll see that trend, but it's not going to be exactly the same.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to tell. All right. So I want to shift back to a topic that you brought up, but it's been an underlying theme of our whole conversation today is mentorship and service, being of service and serving others, right?
Yep.
Speak more to that. And I know you got some things cooking too around mentorship as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So going back to what I learned being a parent and what I've put into this industry, I've had the opportunity to mentor a few people throughout my career, either through what we call runnership or intern type programs. And I'm at a point now where I'd like to give something back to our industry. And I realized when I went through things, it was a lot different. We didn't have a lot of resources. We didn't have a lot of people that we could reach out to. It was more or less, here's a desk, here's a phone, figure it out and let us know if you get any leads.
Good luck, kid.
And good luck, kid. And so what I've started is a mentorship program that I'm taking one or two kids that are really focused on starting a career in commercial real estate. And they may not know where they're headed. It may not be office space. It may be multifamily, industrial, or what have you. Or they may be in the space and just a couple of years into it and don't have the leadership or mentorship that they're looking for. And so I recently started a program, and you can find that on my website, where I'm offering for free to mentor young people coming into the workforce, graduating college or not, just getting into the commercial real estate field. And I'd love to help them and show them, some things that I learned along the way and give them some guidance that I never had.
I mean, what an opportunity, so folks listening, watch this. I mean, first, write this down or make a note for yourself on your phone. But Richard's website, right? And it's his full name. So it's richardgonor.com, RICHARDGONOR.com. And he's got information about this mentorship program. But what a wonderful opportunity, to seek counsel and guidance and gain access to the mind of, one of the top commercial leasing agents in Southern California. You just don't see those opportunities like that. From a residential guy looking in, it's typically, as I see it, a smaller network. You got to know somebody. It's tough to crack in, and a lot of people don't ever crack in, and they fail, and they go down a different path. So, I mean, good on you, brother. What a gift that you're giving.
Thank you. I appreciate it. That's exactly why I started it. And it's about that giving back and serving others. And, I hope somebody out there listening takes me up on it.
Yeah. And then I know, obviously, you're on social media and like Instagram, probably most active there. And then Facebook, LinkedIn. And it's just your full name?
Yeah. I'm probably most active on Instagram, but you can find me on all those platforms. And it's just my full name, Richard Gonor.
Fantastic. So, as we wrap up this conversation, and first of all, thank you for sharing your time and your treasures with us. I mean, you're a very generous guy, and, it's a privilege to have you in the Rise Up Network. What's one or two parting words that you'd like to leave the network with that, someone watching this or listening to this may say, you know what, I really appreciated that, or Wow, I'm gonna take that to heart, or I'm gonna think about that some more.
Well, James, as I said, I'm a fan of the show and a fan of the Rise Up Network and the platform that you built, and really resonated with me. And you can tell maybe why from our conversation today. So I would say take away from this conversation, or one thing to take forward, is learn the earlier on that you can learn to look from outside of yourself and look at the joy that you can bring others. That's going to bring you the most joy. And if you can learn that earlier on in life, earlier than I did, then it's all good. You're going to be happy.
Love that. Yeah. I mean, folks, as we talk about mentorship and in service, that happiness and that joy is readily available anytime if you just put others in front of yourself. I don't know if the Zig Ziglar saying, but you'll get all the things you want in life, through helping others. And I wholeheartedly believe that kind of philosophy. And Richard, it's clear that you do too. Make sure you go check out his website, richardgonor.com. There's information about the mentorship program. Follow him on Instagram, friend him on, Facebook and LinkedIn. Obviously, he's a very generous, selfless man, making himself available to help others. And as we wrap this up, and everyone in the Rise Up Network, that it's about serving others, and that could be being gracious to your neighbor. And, maybe it's something they don't necessarily deserve, but you don't know what they're going through. And you wave to them, you throw a smile at them, or, you hold the door open for somebody, or you give a coworker or business partner, just a pat on the back, or, hey, you're doing great, even though it's not merited. But serving others can take on many shapes and forms, so as we go forward from this episode and this conversation, and we're rising up, put service at the forefront, be gracious with others. And I want to leave you with that. I want to leave you thinking about grace as you're rising up.